You checked your phone 42 times today. You know that because some part of you counted, even if you didn't want to admit it. And in between all that checking, how many times did you do the one thing you told yourself back in January, back on your birthday, back at 2 in the morning when you couldn't sleep, that you were finally going to start doing? That's the question sitting in the room with you right now, whether you invited it or not. And here's the harder truth waiting behind it. If you don't answer that question today, with your actions and not your intentions, you are going to be answering it again next year and the year after that, until one day you're not young anymore, and the gap between the life you imagined and the life you actually built has become too wide to pretend it isn't there. That gap has a name. It's called the price of undiscipline, and every single one of us is paying it or avoiding it one day at a time, whether we realize it or not. Maybe you've been telling yourself you're just in a slow season. Maybe you've been waiting to feel ready, waiting for the motivation to show up like a friend who keeps promising to call and never does. Perhaps right now you're blaming the economy, or your upbringing, or your boss, or your bad luck, or the 24 hours in a day that never seem to stretch far enough for the people who look the most exhausted and the least fulfilled. Maybe you look at people who have what you want and you tell yourself they got lucky, they had help, they had it easier, they had a head start you never got. It's a comfortable story. It lets you off the hook. And it is quietly, patiently ruining your life one excused day at a time. Maybe you've started the same book 3 times and never finished it. Maybe you've joined the gym in January and quietly stopped showing up by February, telling yourself you'd start fresh again soon. Maybe you've got a goal sitting in the back of your mind so long it's practically grown roots there. A goal you've thought about so many times it feels like you've already done the work, when really all you've done is think about it. Thinking about a goal isn't the same as building toward it, no matter how many hours you've spent doing the thinking. And somewhere deep down, you already know that. That quiet discomfort you feel right now isn't me being harsh with you. It's the truth finally getting a word in edgewise. Maybe you've noticed it in smaller ways too, ways that don't feel dramatic enough to worry about. The way you tell yourself you'll respond to that message later and later becomes never. The way you know exactly what you should be eating and exactly what you actually reach for at 11 at night. The way you've rehearsed the version of yourself who wakes up early, who follows through, who doesn't need anyone checking in on them to stay on track, and yet somehow that version keeps staying a rehearsal instead of becoming the show. None of that makes you lazy. None of that makes you broken. It makes you human, and it makes you exactly like almost everyone else who has ever sat where you're sitting right now, wondering if this is just how it's always going to be. It isn't, but only if you're willing to do something about the gap instead of just naming it. Ask yourself, honestly, when was the last time you did something hard simply because you said you would? Not because you felt inspired that day, not because someone was watching, but because your word to yourself actually meant something. If the answer takes you longer than a few seconds to find, that silence is telling you something important. It's telling you that somewhere along the way, you started treating your own commitments like suggestions, easy to bend whenever life handed you a decent excuse. And life will always hand you a decent excuse. There will always be a reason to skip it today. Always. The question was never whether a good excuse would show up. It always does. The question is whether you're going to let it drive. Here's what nobody tells you when you're young and full of dreams. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't wait for your mood to improve. It doesn't need your permission or your enthusiasm or your perfect circumstances. Motivation is loud and exciting, and it shows up for the first 3 days of January, full of promises, and then it leaves without saying goodbye, the way it always does. Discipline is the one that stays. Discipline is the one that shows up on the boring Tuesday when nobody's watching, when there's no reward, when you don't feel like it, when the only person keeping score is you. And that difference right there, between the person who waits to feel motivated and the person who acts regardless of how they feel, is the difference between a life of excuses and a life of results. Somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that successful people feel like doing the work every single day. They don't. They just do it anyway. That's the whole secret. It was never a secret at all. It was hiding in plain sight the entire time, and most people walked right past it because it wasn't exciting enough to hold their attention. So let's talk about what it actually takes to build a disciplined mind, because by the time we're done today, you're going to know exactly what to do in the next 24 hours. Not someday, not when things calm down, not when the timing feels perfect, because the timing is never going to feel perfect. Today, there are 6 things I want to walk through with you. 6 ideas that sound almost too simple when you first hear them. The kind of simple that makes people nod along and forget them by lunchtime. Don't let yourself do that this time. Simple isn't the same as easy, and simple isn't the same as unimportant. Some of the most life-changing ideas in the world are embarrassingly simple to say and remarkably difficult to actually live out day after day when nobody's watching and nothing feels urgent. The first thing you have to understand is the difference between what happens to you and what you do about it. Life is going to happen to you no matter what. The weather is going to change whether you like it or not. Some years bring sunshine and some years bring storms you never saw coming, and you don't get a vote on which one shows up at your door. You'll lose a job you thought was safe. You'll get hurt by someone you trusted with your whole heart. You'll face a setback that feels personal even when it isn't personal at all. That's not the part you control. Here's the part you do control. What you do next. 2 people can lose the same job on the same day, in the same building, with the same amount of warning. One spends 6 months feeling sorry for himself, telling anyone who'll listen how unfair it all was, replaying the injustice of it until it becomes his whole identity. The other treats it like a strange kind of gift, an unwanted push towards something better, and within a year he's built something the layoff could never have taken from him, because it lives inside his character instead of inside a paycheck. Same circumstance. 2 completely different lives built entirely on the choice of what to do about it. Discipline begins the moment you stop asking life to be fair and start asking yourself what you're going to do with what you've got right now, with the hand you were actually dealt instead of the one you wish you had. Think about the last time something didn't go your way, a relationship that ended before you were ready, a plan that fell apart at the last minute, a room where you weren't given the credit you'd earned. Notice how easy it is to spend your energy narrating the unfairness of it, replaying it, defending yourself to people who weren't even in the room. Now notice how little that energy actually changes about tomorrow. The people who build remarkable lives are not the people who never got dealt a bad hand. They are simply the ones who stopped spending their days arguing with the hand and started playing it instead. Your action step today is simple. Take one thing that happened to you this year that you've been blaming on someone else and write down one thing you could have done differently in response. Not to torture yourself, just to take the steering wheel back into your own hands where it belongs. The second thing to understand is that your life moves in seasons, the same way the earth does, and wisdom means learning to work with them instead of fighting them like they've personally wronged you. You don't get to choose when winter comes. You don't get to choose when the hard season shows up, the one where nothing seems to be growing, where the work feels invisible and the results feel impossibly far away. But here's what the wise farmer knows that the foolish one refuses to learn. Winter isn't punishment. Winter is preparation. The farmer who complains about winter and refuses to prepare for spring will have nothing to plant when the season finally turns in his favor. The farmer who uses winter to sharpen his tools, mend his fences, and study his land will be ready the moment the ground softens, while everyone else is still scrambling to catch up. You cannot change the season you're in right now, but you can absolutely change yourself while you're in it. And that changes everything that comes after. That's the whole game, really, when you strip away all the noise around it. Stop waiting for spring to start becoming the person spring requires. The seasons don't ask permission, and they never will, but your discipline decides what grows once they arrive. Think about the goal you've been circling for years without ever quite landing on it. How much of your delay has actually been about timing, and how much has just been dressed up to look that way? Winter has a way of becoming a permanent excuse for people who never intended to leave it. But the season always turns eventually, with or without your permission, and it would be a shame to still be unprepared when it finally does. Your action step is this. Identify what season you're actually in right now, honestly, without dressing it up or dressing it down, and pick one skill or habit you can be sharpening during it, even if nobody applauds you for it yet, even if the only witness to your effort is you. The third thing, and this one stings a little if you let it, is that you are becoming an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not the 5 people you admire from a distance, not the 5 people you follow online and quietly envy. The 5 people whose voices you actually hear on a regular Tuesday afternoon. Their habits are quietly becoming your habits. Their standards are quietly becoming your ceiling, whether you've noticed the ceiling lowering or not. If the people around you complain more than they create, you will start to sound like them without ever noticing the shift happening in your own mouth. If the people around you treat discipline like a personality trait some people were simply born with, instead of a daily decision anyone can make, you will absorb that belief right along with them, and it will quietly excuse you from ever trying. This isn't about being cruel or cutting people off in some dramatic gesture that feels good for a day and lonely for a year. It's about being honest with yourself about influence, about how much of who you're becoming was never actually chosen by you at all. You wouldn't hand your car keys to someone who'd never driven before and trust them to get you where you're going. So why are you handing your habits, your standards, your entire future to people who aren't going anywhere themselves, people who've made peace with staying exactly where they are? Think about the last conversation where someone talked you out of something ambitious, dressing it up as concern for your well-being. Think about how normal it felt to lower your own expectations just to match the room you were standing in. That's the quiet danger of it. Nobody announces that they're shrinking your standards. It happens in small comments, in shrugged shoulders, in the casual way certain people talk about effort like it's something to be embarrassed by. You don't need a new circle of 10 people overnight. You need to notice, honestly, whether the voices closest to you are stretching you or shrinking you, and then start adjusting the volume accordingly. Your action step is to think of the one person in your circle whose discipline you respect the most, and spend more time near them this week, even if it's just a phone call, even if it's uncomfortable at first. Let their standard rub off on you a little at a time. The fourth thing is the one that trips up almost everybody, and it's this. Success isn't one big heroic decision made in a single dramatic moment. It's a small handful of simple disciplines, repeated every single day, until they compound into something enormous enough to change the entire trajectory of a life. And failure isn't one big catastrophic mistake either, the kind you can point to and blame. It's a small handful of easy errors in judgment, repeated every single day, until they quietly compound into a life you never meant to build in the first place. The workout you skipped today felt like nothing. The book you didn't read felt like nothing. The hard conversation you avoided felt like nothing at all in the moment. And it was nothing on that one day, taken by itself. But do that same nothing for 1,000 days in a row, and it becomes the entire shape of your life, whether you meant it to or not. This is why discipline feels so unglamorous while you're doing it and so undeniable once you look back at what it quietly built. Nobody claps for you on day 40 of doing the small thing right. Nobody's filming it. Nobody's impressed by it yet. But give it 3 years, and people will call you lucky, talented, gifted, blessed, anything except what you actually were, which was simply consistent when it would have been so much easier to quit. Picture 2 people standing at the same starting line on the same ordinary morning. One decides that skipping the small thing today doesn't really matter, just this once, because tomorrow is right there waiting to make up for it. The other decides that today is the only day he actually has any control over, so he does the small thing anyway, tired or not, inspired or not. Fast forward 5 years, and you won't be able to explain the distance between them by pointing to a single dramatic moment. There won't be one. There will only be thousands of small, quiet mornings that either got honored or got skipped. That's the whole story every single time, whether it's a story about health or money or a relationship or a craft someone spent a decade mastering while everyone else waited to feel like it. Your action step is to choose one small discipline, something so easy you have no excuse to skip it, something almost embarrassingly small, and commit to doing it every single day for the next 30 days, no matter what kind of day it's been. The fifth thing to understand is about seeds. And it might be the simplest truth in this entire message, even though almost nobody actually lives like they believe it. You reap what you sow, not what you wish you'd sown, not what you meant to sow back when you had good intentions, what you actually planted with your actual time on your actual days, whether you were paying attention or not. If you plant excuses, you will harvest a life full of reasons why things didn't work out, and you'll believe every single one of them. If you plant discipline, even when the soil looks unpromising, even when you can't see anything happening beneath the surface, you will eventually harvest a life you're proud to stand in and call your own. Here's the part that frustrates people, the part that makes so many of them quit right before the breakthrough. The harvest doesn't come the same day as the planting. Sometimes it doesn't come the same season, or even the one after that. You plant in the spring, not knowing exactly which day the fruit will show up. And you have to trust the process even when you can't see the proof yet, even when everyone around you is asking why you're still bothering. That's where most people quit. Not because the method failed them, but because they stopped watering the field before the first green shoot ever broke the surface where they could see it. Think about a garden left untended for a season. Nobody has to plant weeds. They show up entirely on their own, without any effort at all, the moment you stop tending the ground. That's the part people forget. Neglect isn't neutral. An unplanted field doesn't stay empty and harmless, waiting patiently for you to get around to it. It fills up with whatever shows up uninvited, and most of what shows up uninvited is not what you wanted growing there in the first place. Your action step is to think about what you've actually been planting this month, not what you meant to plant, and get honest with yourself about whether you'd be happy harvesting more of exactly that a year from now. The sixth thing, and this one ties everything else together, is that discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It's the bridge to it. Somewhere along the way, people started believing that discipline means a smaller life, a stricter life, a life with less joy squeezed into it. It's the exact opposite of that. The undisciplined life looks free on the surface because there are no rules, no structure, nothing holding you back from doing whatever you feel like in the moment. But look closer and you'll see it's actually a life ruled by whatever feeling shows up first each morning, at the mercy of moods you never chose and can't predict. Undisciplined people are controlled by their emotions. Disciplined people are the ones who actually get to choose because they've built something sturdy enough to stand on regardless of how they woke up feeling. The person who's built the habit of getting up early doesn't wrestle with the alarm clock every single day the way everyone else does, fighting the same battle from scratch each morning. The person who's built the habit of saving money doesn't panic every time an unexpected bill shows up at the door. Discipline, practiced daily, quietly builds you a kind of freedom that undisciplined people can only dream about while they're scrolling through their phones at midnight, wondering why they feel so stuck, so tired, so far behind where they thought they'd be by now. Think of the calmest, steadiest person you know, the one who doesn't seem to panic when life throws something unexpected at them. Chances are it's not because their life is easier than yours. It's because somewhere along the way they built a structure sturdy enough to absorb the shock, a set of disciplines that keep functioning even on the days their feelings are a mess. That structure didn't appear overnight, and it wasn't handed to them. It was built, brick by boring brick, on ordinary days nobody else was watching. Your action step is to pick the one area of your life where you feel the least free right now, the one that keeps you up at night, and ask yourself honestly what discipline, practiced consistently for the next few months, would hand that freedom back to you. Now let me be honest with you for a moment, because I don't think you need another pep talk today. I think you need someone to tell you the truth the way a real friend would, not the way a stranger performing for a camera would. I know what it's like to look at your own life and feel the sting of how much time has already passed without much to show for it. I know what it's like to make the same promise to yourself in January that you made the January before, and the one before that, watching the same pattern repeat itself while some quiet part of you wonders if you're just someone who talks about change instead of someone who actually makes it happen. Maybe you felt that exact sting more than once. Maybe you're feeling it right now, listening to this, wondering if this time will be any different from all the other times you told yourself something would change. And maybe underneath that wondering there's a quieter fear, one you don't say out loud to anyone, the fear that you might actually be someone who never changes, that the pattern really is just who you are and always will be. I want to push back on that fear directly because it's lying to you. Patterns feel permanent right up until the moment someone decides to interrupt them, and then it turns out they were never permanent at all. They were just unchallenged. I want you to hear this clearly because it matters more than almost anything else I could say to you today. That pattern is not who you are. It's just what you've been practicing, and it was never permanent, no matter how permanent it has started to feel. Anything you've been practicing, you can start practicing differently, starting today, starting with something small enough that you can't talk yourself out of it in the next 5 minutes. You don't need a complete transformation by tomorrow morning. Nobody actually gets that, no matter what the highlight reels online would have you believe. You need one decision, made today, that your future self will look back on and thank you for. The bridge between where you are and where you want to be was never some giant, dramatic leap that required perfect conditions. It was always just the next small, disciplined step, the one you keep putting off because it doesn't feel important enough or dramatic enough to count. It counts. It has always counted, every single time, even when nobody was there to notice. Somewhere out there is a version of you 5 years from now, and that version is being shaped right now, today, by whichever choice you make in the next few hours, not by some far-off decision waiting for the right season to arrive. By this one. The version of you who kept the promise and the version of you who quietly let it slide again are standing at the exact same fork in the road at this exact moment. And only one of them gets to keep walking toward the life you actually wanted. It's uncomfortable to think about it that plainly. Most people avoid thinking about it that plainly precisely because it's uncomfortable. And avoiding discomfort has become such a habit that entire lives get spent tiptoeing around the one conversation that could have changed everything. You don't have to be one of those people anymore. You get to decide that right now in this exact sentence if you're willing to. And maybe you're sitting there thinking about how many times you've heard some version of this message before, how many videos, how many books, how many well-meaning people have told you to just start. You're right to be a little skeptical of another voice telling you the same thing. But here's the difference between hearing this message and actually living it. It was never about hearing it one more time. It was about what you do in the next 24 hours after hearing it, which is the only part that has ever actually mattered. Here's the line I want you to carry with you long after this video ends, the one I hope echoes in your mind the next time you're standing at the edge of a decision. The seasons don't ask your permission, but your discipline decides what grows in them. Say that to yourself the next time you don't feel like doing the small thing. The season was never the real problem. What you choose to plant in it always was. There is no version of this message that works without you actually closing the gap between hearing it and living it. You can watch 100 more videos like this one. And if the gap stays a gap, Nothing in your life changes except the number of videos you've watched. That's not a criticism. It's just the honest math of it. Understanding a principle was never the hard part. Living inside it on an ordinary Tuesday when nobody's applauding and nothing feels urgent, that's the part that actually separates the life you've been dreaming about from the life you've been settling for. And the good news, the genuinely good news, is that the separation was never as far as it felt. It was always just one disciplined decision away, repeated enough times to become who you are instead of just something you occasionally do. You don't need to fix everything about your life this week. You just need to stop being the kind of person who waits for the perfect week to arrive before doing the one thing that's actually within reach right now. So here's your challenge for the next 24 hours. And I mean the actual next 24 hours, not someday, not next Monday when things settle down, because things are never going to fully settle down. Pick one discipline from everything we talked about today. Just one, not five, not a whole new life plan drawn up on a napkin. Just one single discipline. And do it before you go to sleep tonight, even if it's small, even if nobody will ever know you did it, even if it feels almost too simple to matter. That one action is the seed. Plant it today, while today still belongs to you. And if you're serious about this, if something in what you just heard landed somewhere real inside you, I want you to do one more thing before you go. Leave a single word in the comments below. The one word that represents what you're committing to starting today. Discipline, consistency, action. Whatever that word is for you. Not as a performance for strangers scrolling past, but as a quiet promise you're making to the only person who will actually have to live with whether you kept it. You already know what that word is. You knew it before this video even started. Go write it down, and then go become it. Years from now, when someone asks you how things changed, you probably won't point to today. You probably won't even remember today specifically, this exact video, this exact sentence. That's fine. That's actually how it's supposed to work. Discipline rarely announces the moment it started. It just quietly becomes the foundation everything else gets built on, until one day you look up and realize the life around you doesn't feel like an accident anymore. It feels like something you built, one ordinary day at a time, starting with a decision nobody else even noticed you were making. Let today be that day. Not because it's a special day, because you decided it would be.